I've read, I've come to realize two things. All sciences originated in Africa, and the languages we've been forced to use keep us in a state of confusion. Factually, we shall see that Africa is the source of high culture and technology, which Western people call civilization, which for them connotes technology, and that our world has been deliberately turned upside down. White people are trying to claim everything that historically and culturally Africans created. One of my mantras for this class that I utilize is that we know a lot, yet paradoxically, we know very little about the lot we know. So on examination of the gospels which Africa has given to the world, we shall see why Volney, a French count, wrote in his book, Ruins of Empires, published in 1793, which is just 5 years before Napoleon Bonaparte invaded with his soldiers, engineers, and scientists. And so on page 16 to 17, we have, there a people now forgotten discovered, while others were yet barbarians, the elements of the arts and sciences, a race of men now rejected from society for their sable skin and frizzled hair, founded on the study of the laws of nature, the civil and religious system which still govern the universe. Another one of my mantras is receiving correct information inculcates correct knowledge and generates correct thinking, which produces correct action. This is very important because if you start out wrong, you're going to end up wrong. So starting out correct, you should end up correct. And a very important part of the study is etymology, which is the origin, structure, and meaning and use of words. For example, I've used three words which, while they mean the same, appear to have different origins. Yet they're historically tied to one source, which is Africa. The English know, Latin science, and the Greek gosnos. This last word is seen in diagnosis, which is also in cognition, derived from the Latin, who borrowed it from the Greeks. Historically, like the French, long after the Greeks invaded Africa in 325 BCE, under the Alexander the Greek, who defeated the Assyrians, who had themselves invaded in 525 BCE. Alexander claimed the high culture they found as theirs. The Romans defeating them in 58 BCE did the same, with others coming after, like the Arabs in 641 to 661 ACE, after the Common Era, all claiming the wisdom that Volney spoke of, yet which they never created wherever they came from. Western society makes the claim that it is built upon the foundation of ancient Rome and Greece. And when you look in the dictionary, you'll notice that while lots of words are derived from other languages, they claim many are derived via Latin or Greek, with many Latin words based on Greek ones and not the other way around. Now we can see it is because they both got their education in Africa, yet refuse to credit African genius as true source. Growing up, I was told to say what you mean and mean what you say. Be forthright and direct. But yet this poses a difficulty if you only know the definition of a word and not what the word actually means. And they can be very opposing because of how the word has been used over time. An example of this is stop being silly and be nice, thinking to improve one's character. Yet silly comes from the Old English, Anglo-Saxon, and Icelandic, which means blessed, prosperous, and happy, and good. Nice is a compound word borrowed from the Old French. It was derived from the Latin nescius, which is the English nescience, or no knowledge, which is a compound in the knee, which is and not, and skill, I-C, to know, hence literally ignorant. This shows how wrong we can be. So while definitions of words can and do change because of how they're used, yet their meanings never do. So we see in that the example there that when we're trying to throw out a blessing, we're actually throwing out a curse, and vice versa. So we have to be very careful because the power of the word lies within its sound. So we can do a lot of detriment to ourselves and others just by using words that we really done out of context. So words are useful for communicating ideas and concepts, but only if we know what they actually mean. And as words are spelled or written with letters called the alphabet, or ABCs and 1, 2, 3s, which being our first introduction instruction, so we should start with what that means. Where did they originate? Who created them? And how they evolved over the millenniums? I shall use information from Wikipedia for ease of use and basically displays how Western academics over the last few centuries used words to confuse us while trying to deny through omission the Africans' creation of high culture, which they rightly, albeit for wrong reasons, call civilization, which is a word derived from civil, which means polite, affable, courteous, or not barbarous. So therein is the reason why we're able to develop a high culture or technological advancements. They cannot hide the truth contained therein because we were civil to each other. We weren't trying to fight one another. We were trying to build each other up. We weren't trying to get advantage. So we had to develop a sense of self. And this is why I say etymology is so valuable in correcting the wrong conceptions. We shall examine the words found in the text, such as the alphabet, Semitic, Proto-Semitic, Canaan, Phoenician, Levant, Hieratic, hieroglyphic, etc., to see what truths lie therein. In this class, we shall cover various subjects like geography, history, archaeology, mythology, numerology, biblical lore, migrations, etc., etc. This quote I love from Eddie Griffin, the great comedian. Reading is fundamental. It is very necessary to gain an understanding. So writing is fundamental to exploring one's horizons. So I've written several different papers for this class, various different titles. History of the alphabet, the origin of numbers, something about everything, really. And like I said, this covers a wide range because in this class, everything is connected. This is what we will try to find out. And through etymology is very necessary. This is a journey I started when I left school in '76. Knowing I was being miseducated, yet not fully knowing how, I was determined to buy some books. And when I was going to school, I read every book from primary school. I would finish a book before we finished the class. So by the time the class was done, I would have already read the book, so I was advanced. So when we came around to the question and answers, people was wondering how I knew these things because I wasn't waiting for the teacher. I was just reading. And the first books I purchased from the Metaphysical Bookstore. Her brother Cal was on the corner of Englewood and Brunswick Street, right across from Dellwood School. There I found Mr. J.A. Rogers. Books I found was Africa's Gift to America, World's Greatest Man of Color, 2 volumes, Sex and Race was 3 volumes. They had 5 Negro Presidents, Nation is No Color Line, and a couple of more. But still, Mr. Rogers, born in Jamaica, I don't think he's celebrated enough. Very few people, when I asked, do they know about any of his books, they invariably answer no. But this was one problem that I had, because like I said, I did not have an education in Africa. So when I found his books and this world opened up to me, this is a problem, because I found after many years, when I was moving into another direction, which I thought was correct, thought it would think it was African, but I come to find out it was overlaid with a lot of strangely Europeanisms. I don't know how, but anyhow, that's another story. So, but in this book by Mr. Rogers, like one of them was Sex and Race. In this book, in the back, in the appendix, they had, and this is something I'm going to go into in a little while as well, they had pictures of the Virgin Mary and Christ child. But come to find out, it wasn't Virgin Mary and Christ child. It was pictures of Est, known to the Greeks as Isis, and her son, Haru, known to the Greeks as Horus. So all the pictures that we find nowadays depicting the Virgin and her son of Jesus was actually founded upon the pictures of Isis and her son, Horus. So But I didn't have nobody teach me these things. I saw it, but I didn't recognize the powers that I had. It wasn't until like, oh gosh, how many years afterwards? Maybe 30 years afterwards, I came to find out what was the truth that I had. I had to do a Sankofa and go back, because I found, like I said, I'm 76. I started this journey. In 77, I had a little detour, and that lasted for, oh gosh, several years. I was a young man, and then I became an older man. I found out that I was on the wrong track, so I had to get back on the right track, and I had to go back to Mr. J. Rogers for a foundation. So this was the beginning of my journey, which takes me back to the thought, and like I said, I'm having somebody teach me. This journey started, like I said, many years ago, but I remember distinctly in 72, he was reading a book in my English class, 72. So I started science in 72. So 72, 73, we was reading this book called Crossing the Switchblade, which had to do with gangs of New York. I don't remember very much about the book, but it was distinctly, to me, one was it was about, when I looked at it, it was about the white guy coming in to save black people, gangs of Christianity. But anything I really remember about the book was one name. I don't remember anything. I've done a little bit of research since recently. This was a gang in New York called the Mau Maus. That's the only thing I remember the book. I don't remember the other gang's name or anything else. But this gang, Mau Maus, just stuck in my name. Mau Maus just stuck in my mind. It wasn't until many years later that I found that the Mau Maus was freedom fighters from out of Kenya. They literally was fighting for liberation in Africa. And they call themselves the Mau Maus, whether it was their name or some other, by some themselves or by someone else, is a bit debatable, but nevertheless, I found it interesting that these brothers in New York was using the name Mau Maus. They're using it in the early 60s. And so when I found this out, I said, oh my goodness, I did not know that. So I saw the teacher that taught us this book. We, like I said, in 72, the segregation had just ended, the school segregation had just ended in this island. The other boycott happened in 59. Segregation, the rules of segregation was pulled on in late 59. I was born in the early 60, first month of 60. So by the time I'm going to school, segregation is just being done away with. They opened up the schools in 71, as far as integration is concerned. So we're reading this book in 72. I had one white female in my class. All of us, the rest of us was black. So in learning this information about the Mau Maus, I was like immediately saying, well, why weren't we taught about the Mau Maus and this history about the rebellion in Africa? So I saw the teacher years later, and by that time he had received his doctorate, so now he was a doctor of education, whatever field he was in. I think it was English. But anyhow, so I said, Mr. Doctor, tell me, you know about the Mau Maus? He says, yes. I said, well, why didn't tell us that these was freedom fighters, that this group in New York had named themselves after freedom fighters? And his answer was that it was not part of the curriculum. That was not part of what he was supposed to be teaching. But I'm thinking, well, here he is. No wonder the children that don't know anything, because here he is, a person who has the perfect opportunity to throw us some history, ongoing history, because the Mau Maus are still fighting at that point. Yeah? So some real ongoing history. They have recently won a court case to have compensation for the atrocities that the English done against them during the fight for liberation of Kenya, the Kikuyu and others. But this is what I mean about how we need people to give us correct information, because without this here, we have just lost. So, like I said, a perfect learning opportunity was missed. So look at the Mau Mau uprising, for one thing. So in this class, like I said, for me, names, words are very important. Without that, we become very, like I said, the language is used to confuse. There's a word to use in this for this language called equivocal. English is what they call an equivocal language. Most of the languages, like or they call the Romance languages, but most of these languages are what called equivocal, meaning equivocal. So when we look up that word, which I'm not going to do, but this one in this class, a dictionary is very vital to have. So looking up the word, let me see. I'm not going to do that right now. But looking at the word equivocal, it means equivocal. Equivocal. It words means that words can be used either way, and hence we know that English is like that. A lot of words sound the same, and they can have totally different meanings. A lot of words, and so hence a lot of confusion comes in through that way there. I'm not get to the words yet, but you know that using English is very like if you say beat, so beat a drum, beat to music, or beat, yeah. It's very strange, but anyhow, one word, some words which I was looking at before, I was trying to get a handle on. So we're going to go through and do some words tonight. We're going to look at words like gender, and see, words have meanings and they have definitions, and people use words sometimes in and out of context for a set agenda. So agenda. So let's look at this word. Start off with gender. That's the beginning. Yeah. So we have the concept of gender in the modern sense is a recent invention in human history. The ancient world has no basis of understanding. The ancient world has no basis of understanding gender as has been understood. I should maybe enlarge on this, I think, because I don't know. It's a bit smallish. So let me see if I could get it bigger. I don't know. I'm gonna think how to do this. Let me figure that out. The concept of gender, if we can get this up. And I don't know that I'm going to be able to do that. So anyhow, I'm just going to stick with this here. I'll just read it off. The stupid thing working better. Okay. The concept of gender in the modern sense. Settings. See if we can get this thing. Nope, that ain't going to give me what I want either. Okay. Okay. The concept of gender in the modern sense is a recent invention in modern history, in human history. The ancient world has no basis of understanding gender as it has been understood in the humanities and social sciences for the past few decades. The term gender had been associated with grammar for most of history and only started to move towards it being a malleable cultural construct in the 1950s and 60s. Sexologist John Money introduced the terminological distinction between biological sex and gender as a rule in 1955. Before his work, it was uncommon to use the word gender to refer to anything but grammatical categories. For example, in a bibliography of 1,200 references on marriages and family from 1900 to 1964, the term gender does not even emerge once. Analysis of more than 30 million academic article titles from 1945 to 2001 showed that the use of the term gender were much rarer than uses of sex, was often used as a grammatical category early in this period. By the end of this period, the use of gender outnumbered the use of sex in the social sciences, arts, and humanities. It was in the 1970s that feminist scholars adopted the term gender as a way of distinguishing socially constructed aspect of the male-female differences, which they call gender, from biologically determined aspects, which is sex. The last 2 decades of the 20th century, the use of gender in academia has increased greatly, outnumbering uses of sex in the social sciences. While the spread of the word in science publications can be attributed to the influence of feminism, its use as a synonym for sex is attributed to the failure to grasp the distinction made in feminist theory. The distinction has sometimes become blurred with the theory itself. And David Haig stated, among the reasons that working scientists have given me for choosing gender rather than sex in biological context are desires to signal sympathy with the feminine goals, to use a more academic term, or to avoid the connotation of copulation. So we see that this term gender was only used for words. Like in French, we have gender gender specific words. So a word would either be masculine, feminine, or neuter. Yeah, and that's how they were up until the 1950s. This is the only way this word was understood. It was nothing to do with people whatsoever. Yeah, so then hence the confusion that we have now in the gender wars. And hence, like you said, the feminist academics, they were just trying to be politically correct and sympathizing with the feminine girls, since the trying not to trying not to seem politically incorrect. So that's why this term came into more into general usage. But it has nothing to do with humans whatsoever. In reality, it is, but like I said, it's another word used to confuse, as far as I'm concerned. Now, another word utilized quite often today, people talking about playing the race card and all of this here, but race has nothing to do with people either. We made it to be so, but it has nothing to do with race. So the Irish use of this word racist, the late Old English also used race, R-A-S-E, is a narrative or an account. In 1300, an act of swift running or hard attack. Also a course of life or conduct, a swift current from the Old Norse's ras. And when you look at these words, you got to remember a lot of different things because they come from different desperate areas. But meanings are basically the same. So in Old Norse ras, R-A-S, is a running, a rush of water, cognate with the Old English ras, I don't even know how you say that, but anyhow, it was a running, a rush, a leap, a jump, a storming, an attack, or else a survival of the Old English verb of spelling and pronunciation influenced by the Old Norse noun and the verb. So we look at words, a lot of times we can say, well, they're not really sure where they come from. And that's for another reason that I shall bring forth as we go along. But now the Norse and Old English words are from Proto-Germanic res, or which source of Middle Dutch rasen, to rave or to rage, and German rasia, whereas in Old English resatio, which is to raise or fire, from a variant from the possible Indian European ERS, one, or to be in motion, such as Originally a northern word, it became general in English in 1550. Earlier use more broadly of any course which has to be run, passed over, or gone through, such as the course of time or events of a life, the track of the sun or moon across the sky, meaning contest of speed, competitive trial and running, riding, etc. against rivals is from 1510s. For the sense of artificial stream leading water to a mill, etc., see race in the third sense. And the meaning of electoral context and public offer by 1855. This is the original uses of race. So when it comes to humans, we have this here. This is from an article from Britannica. Somebody wrote this out about on race. The race idea that the human species is divided into distinct groups on the basis of inherited physical and behavioral differences. Genetic studies in the late 20th century refuted the existence of biogenetically distinct races. And scholars now argue that races are cultural interventions reflecting specific attitudes and beliefs that were imposed on different populations in the wake of Western European conquest, beginning in the 15th century. At no point from the first rudimentary attempts at classifying human populations in the 17th and 18th centuries to the present day have scientists agreed on the number of races of humankind, the features to be used in the identification of races, or the meaning of race itself. Experts have suggested a range of different races varying from 3 to more than 60 based on what they have considered distinctive differences in physical characteristics of land. These include hair type, head shape, skin color, height, and so on. The lack of concurrence on the meaning and identification of races continued into the 21st century, and contemporary scientists are no closer to agreement than their forebears. Thus, race has never in the history of its use had a precise meaning, except the one we first gave. Because of the overlapping of traits that bear no relationship to one another, such as skin, color, and hair texture, and the inability of scientists to cluster peoples into discrete racial packages, modern researchers have concluded that the concept of race has no biological validity. So hence, like I said, these are just two words used today, gender and race, that they're totally used out of context. But a lot of people go to war, a lot of people get code names, and all sorts of craziness is happening because of the confusion of words. Like I said, the usage of word changes through time, but it doesn't change the word. Yeah. So that's just the looking at this couple of words. So leading into a next thing, words. I'm going to go here, and I'm going to start sharing my different screen. I'm going to go to a different screen. So while I do that, there, like I said, looking at words. So we saw words coming from Old English, come from the North Icelandic, but when I look at dictionaries, I don't really see words coming from out of Africa. I see a lot of words coming from Europe, but not very many from Africa. But is that true? Do we not have words coming from Africa? There are words coming from out of Africa. We just talked about one, Mary, but I don't want to do that. I'm going to say that for a little while. What I want to do right now, I'm going to look at this word here, Pteropharma. Yeah, Pteropharma, which is dry land, the ground as distinct from the sea or air. Right, so its origin is Latin. Terra is just firm land. It's terra firma. Terra means land, firma is land. It's no brainer. And in the 17th century, donating the territories on the Italian mainland, which was subjected to the state of Venice, from Latin, literally firm land. Yeah, so hence it's a Latin word. But where does it come from? The etymology, terra firma. Okay, let's look at Africa. Let's see what we have in Africa to do with this here. So Tasseti, land of the bow, also Takenet. The frontier of the borderland was the first name of the administrative division of Upper Egypt, one of the 42 number of ancient Egypt. So Tasseti was a name used in ancient Africa for land, Ta. Yeah? Yesterday, every name was ruled by the Nama provincial government, who answered directly to the pharaoh. So, so we see the area of the district was about 2 chata, or about 5.5 hectares. Hence, we have the Ta word back in here in hectare, which we're talking about more land. So, these are the different nomarchs of Tasseti. These are the rulers during that time. But anyhow, we see that the word Tasseti, land of the bow. Yeah. Next one we have is which is going to take us to somewhere else. This is Mary, ancient Egyptian name, Mary. So we have the name for one of the names for Egypt is Tamari. I'm gonna go there. Tamari. Tamari meaning, yes. I'm sorry, come back here. From Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia, Mary was one of this possible spellings. Let me go. Mary or Mary, M-E-R-Y or M-E-R-I, in its feminine equivalent is M-E-R-Y-T or M-E-R-I-T, married. So hence we understand that the feminine is the Mary, and Mary is masculine. With the addition of the T makes it a feminine. Yeah. So that's how. So hence we went back to gender. That's why you find this verse. So we understand that being as we find the oldest language in the world, or oldest writing in the world, is what they call hieroglyphics. This is it right here. This is the beginning of all of this here. The origin of Pteropharma, the origin of Ta as land, is African. So now we come to understand this. Mary or Mary is the feminine. I'm missing something. I need to go back and find something else. So we have Maraneth, consul of the Pharaoh Dan of the first dynasty. That's how old these words are. Mary, high priest of Ammon, 18th dynasty. Mary, high priest of Osiris, 19th dynasty. Marit, wife of Ka, earners of the Tibetan tomb in TTB. So we see that origin of the word there, right, to marry. I'm trying to find this. I gotta go back, I think. Let me see. So yeah, so we find the word Tamari is an ancient name. Tamari is an ancient name for Egypt. Kemet, Tamari. So that is one there. Now look at the word Mary now. So we see Tamari. Let us examine this name, Mary. Mary, we find, is a word for the Virgin Mary, as we saw before. The Virgin Mary with the child, Christ child. Too far back. I'm going too far back. And I'm looking here. Okay, so that's that. So let us look at Mary. There's a story in the lost books of the Bible, forgotten books of Eden. People don't know about this here. So let us look at the word Mary according to the Bible. The two words, two names in the Bible. One is the sister of Moses. Her name was Miriam. And Mary and Miriam and Maria is the same word, actually. So we in this concordance in the Bible, back in the Bible here, we have Miriam, which means bitterness and sorrow, which is Greek Miriam, and Maria, English Mary, sister of Moses and Aaron. That's in Exodus 15:20. Yeah. So we have one meaning of Miriam to be bitterness and sorrow. Yeah. But see, I need to find what does Mary mean though. Oh, from Wikipedia, free encyclopedia, Mary was one possible spelling in hieroglyphs. Mary or Mary, and its feminine equivalent, married or married, is an ancient Egyptian name meaning beloved. It was used commonly during the Old and Middle Kingdom and very frequent during the New Kingdom. Yeah. So this is where Mary comes from. This is what it means. It means two things. It means beloved, and it also means love, and also means bitterness, according to the Hebrews, according to these other people. But we see that the word Mary was going all the way from the Old Kingdom. So before any Jew, any Greek, or anyone else, any Latin, any English, the word Mary was in use, and it meant love. Hence, to marry the beloved land. Okay. Now, why is these two senses of the word used? I could give you another, but first I'm going to read the story from out of this book called The Forgotten Books, The Lost Books of the Bible, Forgotten Books of Eden, some book I got years and years ago. And this is the story from out of what they call the Proto-Evangelion. Yes? It's a story about the early days of Mary and her husband. So this is from chapter 12. It's a decree from Augustus for taxing the Jews. This is actually biblical. So Joseph put Mary on an ass to return to Bethlehem. This when it's supposed to go to the text. The text is so. And it came to pass that there went forth a decree from the Emperor Augustus that all the Jews should be taxed who were in Bethlehem in Judea. And Joseph said, I will take care of my children, or take care that my children be taxed. But what shall I do with this young woman? To have her taxed as my wife, I am ashamed, and if I tax her as my daughter, all Israel knows she is not my daughter. He was very conflicted as an old man with this young girl. But anyhow, when the time of the Lord's appointment shall come, let him do as he seems good to me. Seem to him. And he saddled the ass, put up upon it, and Joseph and Simon followed after her, thus the brothers, and arrived at Bethlehem within 3 miles. Then Joseph, turning about, saw Mary sorrowful, and said within himself, perhaps she is in pain through that which is within her. But when he turned about again, he saw her laughing, and said to her, Mary, how happens it that I sometimes see sorrow and sometimes laughter enjoying thy countenance? And Mary replied to him, I see 2 people with mine eyes, the one weeping and mourning, and the other laughing and rejoicing. And he went again across the way, and Mary said to Joseph, take me down from the ass, for that which is me presses to come forth. So here we have the story that Mary exhibited both of those qualities of bitterness and joy and love. Yeah? So we have this concept of Mary. There's another interesting concept of Mary, of happiness. When we look in the dictionary, so we find dictionaries. Let's do it like this here, and we take another tab and we go to sorry. Go here. What did it say? Mary? Mery. Yes. Mary meaning, and I want to go here. And let me see if I can blow this up so that we can have a better look at it. And there's only one, so I'm getting blowed up. Okay, that looks better, I think. Yes. So Mary is an adjective, cheerful and lively. That narrow streets were dense with merry throngs of students. So Mary, slightly good human drunk. That was Mary. So translations to more definitions is origin is Germanic, Old English, marriage, and English is mirth, and equals Mary. Old English marriage is pleasing, delightful, and German origin related to mirth. Yeah? So hence mirth, Mary. But Mary, it follows a sequence actually of these words. When one meets a person, male and female, they find mirth and merriment. They have happiness. Yeah? So hence happy is another word we shall look up as well. So mirth and merry. And these 2 people, male and female, finding all of this happiness, decide to get together and become man and wife. So they determined to get married, to marry. Yes? So because they was married, they decided to marry. And that means beloved. This is old African, you know? So although we didn't know that the word is African, marry, the term marry and all of that has to do with Africa. Why? It's because the story we talked about just now concerning the sorrow of Mary, as you see, that doesn't start from her because it starts from Aaron's sister, but they don't say why she's named Mary. But let us go back to an even more ancient story of who originally held the name of Mary. This is the lady named Est. That name means strand, better known as Isis. Remember the TV show back in the 70s called Isis, the miracle worker. But anyhow, Isis is the ancient Nata of Africa. She was very beloved. She was the sister wife to Osiris, or Asar is African. And when Asar went on a pilgrimage to spread his knowledge to the world, Mary was left in charge. Mary, his wife, Isis, left in charge. And she held very good against Set, his brother. The brother was trying to usurp the throne, but he couldn't make the inroads because Mary was always vigilant and making sure that he couldn't usurp. But when her husband came back and they had a feast for him, Set made this coffin. She was very happy to see him, but she made this coffin, sarcophagus, and invited, and they was throwing a ceremony, feast for his return. And Set said anyone that could lay into this coffin, and this story goes back to the how you say the Cinderella and her shoe. So he said anyone who could get into the coffin could have the coffin, but no one knew that he had secretly taken the exact measurements of Asar and made it to exact measurements so only he could fit into it. And when he was the last to lay in it, then the Set and his conspirators, 72 conspirators, sealed up the coffin and chucked it into the river Nile, and it was lost. And Mary, despondent because she couldn't find a husband, cried and was bitter and shed tears. Yeah. So this is where that story of bitterness of Mary and also joy of Mary comes from, because she was very beloved of her husband, and because of the love for her husband, she sought him out. She sought him out until at last, through some children telling her where to look, she found where the body was and recovered it. That's another further story, but I just want to show the origin of the both senses of the word of beloved and also of bitterness. So this is where the origin of Mary comes from. And that's why you have these two different etymologies, so two different meanings. And so when we look at this here, we say, well, what else? Word, I just showed you three words: Mary, the Mary of happiness, and the Mary of how can I say, lead into childbirth, because husband and wife get because they're happy together, they get married. Yeah, that's the origin of such things. That was one. That was done. Next, I'm going to do some stuff. What I'm going to look at. Nile Valley sources of the Old Testament. Like I said, whereas that we think is one way, let's go see if they could be another way. So this is a book, Echoes of the Dry Land. Let's come out of her real quick. Yeah, that's it. They're backstage and coming in, and right. So I'm back. Hopefully, I'm back on. And let me come out of there and share the screen here. Yeah. Let me do this. Share audio. Yeah. So So right now I'm in the here. I'm dog. I want green Chrome. Okay, cool. I didn't know that I done that there. So I'm a bit confused now, but anyhow, let me continue on. I don't know if I was sharing the screen before. Of course. Not that. That's not what I want to do. I'm sort of like lost my spot now all of a sudden. Anyhow, let me go back. Let me go back. Right now, I want to share some information from out of this book right here. Acres of the Old Dark Land, by Dr. Charles Finch. And he wrote in her some interesting etymologies. So we start from, and so this Nile Valley of source of the Old Testament, this what he purports to do in here is to break down words. So one of these verses. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see how he breaks down these words. So in Genesis, the Hebrew Adam, or Adam, A-D-M, because they didn't use vowels, is the first man in the image of God, the father of mankind, the name of all things, and the completion of creation. He is also the Egyptian atom, or ATM, or atom, defined conversely as the first God in the image of man and the father of mankind. Root of ATM or is tam, or TM, tum, which has several meanings, among them mankind or people and completion. Atom is no less than a complete or perfect divine man. The cognate of the root of tam is dam, and this means to name. Thus, the most elementary and indisputed etymological analysis demonstrates that all the attributes of the Egyptian deity Atum are embraced in the Hebrew Adam. You might note that in passing that Genesis represents not merely the creation of the cosmos, but also the new cosmic time cycle. The great year begins in the sign of Leo, the lion. Atum is not only God as man, but additionally the lion face, one who creates Shu and Tefnut, also represents in lion form. Hence, Leo the lion is Atum, and since the genesis of the great year is in the lion sign, the biblical Genesis, logically enough, begins with Atum. So you have Adam, Hebrew, is one, father of mankind, first man of the image of God, first man in the image of God, completion of creation, name of all creatures. Yeah, so we have here. This is where I'm starting from. I don't know if you can see it. I can't see it there. So this is what we're looking at here. This and this. Opposite now. Yes. So Atum, which is ATM, which is the Egyptian, is the father of mankind, first God in the image of man. Root Tiam means completion. Cognate Diam means to name. Now, the female consort of Adam is Eve, whose Hebrew name can be rendered as Chava or Hava. Eve is seduced by the serpent in the tree of life, who bids her to pluck the fruit of the tree of knowledge in direct violation of God's command. There are two ways in which we can unravel the etymological strands of Eve's name. On the one hand, Chava can be derived from the Egyptian Hafa or Hafa, which is H-F-A without a vowel, or H-E-F-A, Hafa, one of the names of the great mother serpent of the world, or it can be derived from Hawa, H-W-A, or Hiwa, H-E-W-A, meaning fruit. Ernest Brusenbach informs us that Hava is another form of the Aramaic word Havbe, which means serpent. As Hawa, the fruit, Eve is also identified with the fruit-bearing like tree of life. So Eve, or Hawa, which is Egyptian, which is suborned by the serpent, plucked the fruit of the tree. Hafa is the great mother serpent. Hiwa means fruit. That's the Egyptian. So this imagery comes straight off the Egyptian funeral ritual, where the manes passing through a manta reaches the place where Hathor, the lady of the sycamore, offers fruit to the tired soul to refresh and revitalize him. As we saw in chapter 2, the serpent, tree, and fruit are all aspects of the mother, that have been separated and then relinked in Genesis primitively. Eve is serpent, tree and fruit, which of course the mains, which is spirit, but but who in Genesis is made to violate God's command by offering the fruit to Adam. The fruit that Hathor, the lady of the sycamore, offers to the mains is also that of the tree of knowledge, because it is knowledge and knowledge alone that allows the mains to successfully negotiate a manta. In the ritual, however, such knowledge is the reward of virtue. In Genesis, it is the cause of original sin. So hence, the retelling of the story in the Hebrew is backwards. So in prehistoric Africa, the snake, because of its ability to shed its skin, was a symbol of renewal. And since the python in particular was so often a tree dweller, serpent and tree were linked in a composite symbol that signified life, growth, and renewal. Originally, all of this typology would have been feminine and maternal, of which Eve is but a late expression. What is all the more interesting is that the snake is also one of the forms of Atom, represented that which surges or rears up out of the primeval none, in which the first act of commanded creation. Adam and Eve can both be seen in humanized aspects in the great cosmic serpent, who contains all forms, incorporates both masculine and feminine elements, and is depicted as the snake with its tail in its mouth, signifying the totality of all existence. There's a name for that, which is safe right now. The Garden of Eden imagery is also straight out of the ritual, where it is depicted as a great enclosure of luxurious plant life and flowing waters, an oasis of peace, plenty, and coolness to delight the mains after their hurrying journey through the terror of Amanta. The root of the biblical word Eden, the Hebrew Eden, can be found in Egyptian as D-N or D-E-N, Dan, which means enclosure. Hence the den that people go to tie in at night. So the guy goes to his den to just chill out. Yeah? So it's enclosure. So hence another word that we don't, that's the end. Another word that we don't understand that came from, originally from out of Africa. Much of the medieval religious painting depicted in the Garden of Eden with its tree of life, such as the enclosure, but the image itself is very old. When Adam and Eve are driven from Eden, they settle into the land of Nod. In Egyptian, this word is Nud, and it means outside of or away from, perfectly describing Nod as a place outside of the garden. It is the place set aside for them when they are driven away from Eden. So we have Nod, or NWD, which is Hebrew. Nod is the land east of Eden, when Adam and Eve settled when driven out of the garden. Nod means outside or away from. So we break down some more. This book here is got some great stuff in it. So the first two children of Adam and Eve are Cain and Abel. And with them we first meet in the Bible the myth of the warring twins. Cain is the cultivator of the crops because there was more than these two. The warring twins is a theme throughout the mythology of the Bible. So Cain is the cultivator of the crops. Abel is the shepherd. The sacrifice of Abel's firstling lambs is in the Holocaust to God is more pleasing to him than are Cain's first fruits. We can at least partially understand this episode by reference to the great year. The Hebrew religious emergence during the age of Aries, the ram, starting around 2218 to 58 BCE. That's time period. And this accounts for the pervasive metaphors of the ram, the lamb, and the shepherd permeating the Old Testament. The lamb is the zootypical savior of the age of Aries. The sacrificial lamb, whose flesh and blood renews life and evokes the blessing of God. This is why Abel's lamb sacrifice was more pleasing. The lamb is in fact the alter ego of Abel himself, who when struck down by Cain becomes a sacrificial victim in true Osirian fashion. Abel is thus a biblical type of the sacred king, who is killed in his prime in a rite of fertility and regeneration. He is the sacrificial lamb whose flesh and blood in the Aryan age renew life, making him a type of savior. So with that fact of him being a sacred king which should sacrifice. In Africa, the king was to sit there for a little time. So he was elected young, but as he would get older, he would have to prove himself capable of ruling physically. Yeah. So that's what they developed a said festival. After 30 years, he would have a festival to prove his worthiness as far as physical. Otherwise, he would be sacrificed, because you cannot have the sense is that withered king is a withered nation. So the king always has to show vitality and vim and vigor in order to make the kingdom flourish. So he would be sacrificed at a certain point in time. And this actually is a right that still goes on today. People that know that, but yeah, that's a right that still goes on today. So they've said festival it was to make sure that the king was at the vitality. One could see that their culture unity, as one could say, through a Black Africa. Now this is in ancient Egypt. The said festival where the king would be have to prove his worthiness physically. But yet, when I was younger, watching this movie, and I didn't see, a lot of times I didn't see, but when I was younger, Shaka Zulu came on. So I only saw very few pieces. Once again, I saw, like when Roots came on, I only saw for me, very significant pieces of that there. But the one thing about Shaka Zulu, bringing back to the story now about the Set Festival, where the king had to show his vitality in order to maintain the rulership, is that when Shaka was getting old and the white people came to him and they had this formula that gave him, that rejuvenated his youth, but they gave him was with dye. Yeah, some black dye. So that when he put the black dye in his hair turned black, not like mine, who's all white, but his hair turned black. And so he felt rejuvenated and he would not have to give up the kingdom. And that's why he granted them the ability to bring down his kingdom because he thought they was helping him. But actual fact, it was a fraud. So, but that piece of him having to dye his hair to appear younger, rejuvenate himself, goes straight back into this ancient kingdom of the said festival to show that every pharaoh had to show, or the king, Sultan, had to show his powers and vitality. Yeah. So Cain is a Sethian type from the older dispensation. So hence, Abel was the new. We haven't talked about the great years yet. That's coming down the road. But Cain is a Sethian type from the older dispensation. Cain's name in Hebrew is Qayn, Qayin, equivalent to Qan or Qen in Egyptian. The word Qn can literally means to strike down or to overcome, exactly describing the salient deed in Cain's life. In Hebrew, Abel is Habel, or H-A-B-L-E, or H-A-B-E-L, Habel. Excuse me, the Egyptian form is Haber, which H-A-B-I-R. R and Allah linguistically interchangeable, so that the Egyptian Hab-R can be read as Hab-Il, practically the same as Habal, which is H-A-B-I-L, practically the same as H-A-B-E-L, Hab-Al. And Al, we know what Al means. Hab means feast, and means ceremony or rite. Habal as Hab-R therefore refers to the ritual feast, which is Abel's food offering or lamb to God. We know that in times long anterior to the epoch of the Bible, Dionysian reviews would end in a sacrificial king being torn limb from limb and then eaten by the participants. In this sense, then, Abel himself is the ritual feast. Yeah. So, like I said, that was Dionysian reviews, yes. So in Greek, it's in Hebrew, you have Abel makes a food offering of the Lamb of God to God and is killed by Cain. Hebrew, English, Heb means feast, means rite. So it's ritual feast. After Genesis, the fall, and the first murder, The next major mythical event in the Old Testament is the flood. In this myth, Noah, who survives the flood in a great ark, is established as the master of the flood. More than that, he is the first cultivator of the vine, thus the earliest type of the gardener or cultivator. Noah's name in Hebrew is Nuach, N-U-A-C-H, also N-H in Egyptian, which is equivalent to the Nuank, and also Nua, which is N-U-H. The Egyptian Nu personifies both heavenly and earthly flood waters. Annual inundation so completely excuse me, dominating the Egyptian life is the archetypical flood of the earth and therefore a manifestation of Nu. The heavens were imagined as the celestial flood waters across which sailed the boat of the sun and therefore constituted the heavenly Nu. The Egyptian word Ankh, A-K-H, means fertile field, garden, or irrigated lands. So Nu, N-U-A-K-H, is the Nile flood which irrigates and fertilizes the cultivated fields. This is why Noah is both the master of the flood and the gardener, as Nuach, N-U-A-C-H, and Nuach, which is N-U-A-K-H. He is the flood that fertilizes and rejuvenates the field and gardens. The Ark of Noah, in one sense, is but a replica of the boats that Egyptians used to move about in during flood seasons. But since the flood is also celestial, there are other modes of rendering the Ark. In the stellar mythos, the Ark is polar and zootypical. It is Draco, or Ta'ert, the celestial hippopotamus, who floats on the northern circumpolar heavens. In the lunar mythos, the Ark is the broke of the moon, which sails across the flood of the nighttime heavens on its nightly and monthly travels, which is we're coming up now to the full, which is going to be the autumn equinox. We just had that, so now I'm coming into the full, which is gonna, and this is what we're talking about right now. Talking about the Passover, where the lamb was sacrificed. Finally, the third mythos, it is the boat of the sun on the daily course that is pulled along the great waterway of heaven by the golden ass. Noah and his 3 sons, together with their wives, represent the 8 original ancestors of man that are met with the Ogdad of Hermopolis and the 8 original number of the Dogon. And this Ogdad, we shall come to find out more about that in the book paper that I wrote concerning the origin of numbers. Ogdad means 8. The 2 birds sent out of the ark by Noah, the raven and the dove, indicate the twofold division of the cosmos into darkness and light, exemplified by Set and Eros. The olive branch, according to Macy, is a type of time representing the completion of one time cycle and the beginning of another. When in the course of the procession, the pole star moves or falls from its position, it is said metaphorically to sink into the floodwaters of the northern heavens. The submerged pole star is replaced by another, signaling the end of the flood and the beginning of the new time phase of the great year, symbolized by the olive branch. The Mount Ararat upon which the ark comes to rest is none other than the primordial mound of atom that rises out of the waters of the void in the beginning of creation. This mount or hill can also be construed as the new pole that is erected or rises up in the new era with the great year. For the ancient Kemet mythographers of Inner Africa, time, eternity, and creation were cyclical. Creation was reenacted at the end of every cycle of time, dictated by the movements and activities of the heavenly bodies, and hence we have now the understanding of why the world is created by water or destroyed by water and by fire. Yeah, so we have the flood during the time of Moses, which destroyed the world. The time of Moses was a different type of flood, but the flood of Noah was a procession of the great year, showing a difference, hence becoming up to the vernal equinox now. So the procession is going to start with the new sign. So we're going from the fishes into what now? Aquarius. Yes, this is the new sign coming into now, the new typical sign. So this is where all of these, they call it what they call it Star Wars. If there's a word for it, it's gonna come to me. Let's go into this next word. So off the flood comes 8 people. So Noah can also be Nu in Egyptian, where it means drunkenness. Nu is N-U-H. The Bible states that Noah, after descending from Mount Ararat, cultivated a vineyard, fermented a beverage from grapes, and succumbed to drunkenness. Fermented beverages, because of the intoxicating properties, were the original summer of the gods. Wine drinking was a privilege initially limited to the priesthood, who, as mediators between gods and man, would imbibe the intoxicating liquor as a mode of communicating with the god or ancestral spirits. Another grape story, because the original grape story comes from out of Africa too, with Osiris, grapes growing out of his body. But another grape story within the drunken story within the Bible we find before this flood, after the flood, it's going to be with Lot and his two daughters. So when they escaped from out of Babylon, they went into Babylon. When they escaped from out of this Babylon, they went into the hills where the children got the boy drunk and had sex with him. That's a different story. And these stories are not real, they're actually metaphors for other things. So, but we look at them because we have to understand that these are not people. Mary and Noah and all these people are not real. They are speaking stories. So, this is why limited priesthood mediators between God and man would imbibe the intoxicating liquor as a mode of communicating with the gods or ancient spirits. This is why alcoholic beverages today are called spirits, and the drunkenness of Noah can only be appreciated in this light. Certain customs among the Dogon clarify this point. On certain ritual occasions, the elders of the Dogon community get drunk on millet beer and stagger around the village, making oblique references to the needs of the departed ancestral spirits. The refrain of these intoxicated elders, the dead are starving to death, is sure to unsettle those who have been neglected their sacred duties or sacerdotal duties, or providing food and drink offerings to their ancestors. This reminder from those closest to the ancestral spirits, under the influence of spirituous liquors, spurs the delinquent families to perform their sacred obligations. Thus, they invite trouble among themselves, at least they invite trouble amongst themselves. The association of Noah with winemaking is another attribute which assimilates him to Osiris on the one hand and Dionysus on the other. Having an early advance in etymology for the name Ham, we can easily do likewise with Noah's other 2 sons. In Hebrew, Shem is Sam, hence Sam, the mythical and eponymous ancestor of the Semites. In Egyptian, the equivalent name is Sam or Sam, meaning traveler, wanderer, or nomad. When the Egyptians first encountered the people we today call Semitic, they were nomadic shepherds. Other synonyms used by the Egyptians for these Asiatic pastoralists were Amu, A-A-M-U, Sasu, which is S-H-A-S-U. Japhet is the designated ancestor of the Indo-European peoples. His name transliterates from Hebrew as Japhet, Y-A-P-H-E-T. In Egyptian, this is Yapet, Y-A-P-T, which can be broken down as follows. Ya means islands and Pet means heavens. Therefore, Yapet is the islands of heaven. From a celestial point of view, heaven was centered around the North Pole so that the islands of heaven are also the islands of the North. These boreal islands might well have been the Aegean islands of the pre-classic Greeks, or just well have been the Aegean islands of just possibly the islands of the North Atlantic. You know, the Phoenicians operated a tin mining colony on the British Isles that traded extensively in the north. Since they acted as Egypt's merchant marine, we can assume that the Egyptians were familiar with these North Atlantic islands. The Bronze Age Britons may have been considered the prototypical Indo-Europeans reflected in the Egyptian Yapet. And when we look at the next book called The Ancient and Modern Britons, this one here, we have a lot of that information in here about the Egyptians in England. So I missed something early on, but I'm going to continue with this here. Returning to the figure of Abraham from our earlier discussion of him, we can arrive at etymologies for his name and those of his immediate descendants. He is the first of the patriarchs directly ancestral to the Hebrews, as well as other Western Semitic tribes. He is originally a Chaldean shepherd named Abram, who, in the course of his wanderings, leads his clan into Egypt. The events that befall him there were probably not historical per se, but are nevertheless crucial to the understanding of his subsequent history. His marriage to his half-sister Sarah, for example, appears to be of the same type as the brother-sister marriage practiced among Egyptian royalty. Remember, he talked about Seth, Asar and Aset, yeah, or Isis and her brother Osiris. When he finally does leave Egypt, he seems to undergo transformations that change the whole character of his life. But his Egyptian consort Hagar, he begets Ishmael, who eventually becomes the founding ancestor of the Ishmaelites or Arabians. Hagar's ability to conceive aroused the jealousy and ire of Sarai, who torments her, finally causing Hagar to run away in the wilderness on the way to Shur. She is confronted by the angel of the Lord, who says, "You are with child and will bear a son. You shall name him Ishmael, because the Lord has heard of your afflictions." So this story of his firstborn son being to an Egyptian takes makes the the Hebrew peoples Egyptian. Well, they like to say, because I guess that's why they keep saying the father is where they get the seed from. This where the heritage comes. But in Africa, the inheritance came through the mother, because the reason why is because you always know who your mother is, but the father is very, very seldom named. Yeah, you can definitely tell who the mama is, but the father is always going to be debatable. It could be or couldn't be until we got the DNA test done. So, Ishmael in the Hebrew is Yeshmael, Y-S-M-A-A-L, which in Egyptian can be rendered Yeshmar, Y-S-M-A-I-R. The word Y-S in Egyptian means place. M-A-I-R, Mara means affliction, or hence place of affliction. So Ishmael means literally the place of affliction. Hagar's affliction, or example, her persecution by Sarah, is expressed in the name of her son. In this same encounter, Hagar is also told that Ishmael will become a wild ass of a man, and this evokes the pre-Mosaic worship of You, the golden axe, a form of both Ra and Set. So all of this here is, we find all of these antecedents in African. Is everything is explained through African. I don't like to use the term Egypt, because it's a lot of people's mind, it limits things, and I'm not trying to limit Africa to one geographical land area. The Nile Valley is the longest river in the world. It's 4,000 miles long, 4,000 plus miles long, and it runs from south to north. When Ishmael reaches age 13, God instructs Abraham to perform the rite of circumcision upon himself and all the male members of his clan as a sign of his new covenant. Following this covenant by circumcision, Abram is granted a new identity as Abraham. In Egyptian, this name is given as Abram, and its equivalent in Egyptian can either be Abraham or Abraham. Abraim or Abrahem. The Egyptian word Ab can be hard or real ebb and desire or wisdom. Ra is the Egyptian sun god. Em means fire or light. Ham means servant. Thus, Abraham, or as Abram, is either the desire of the light or fire of Ra, or the light of Ra's wisdom. Abraham is Abraham, as Abraham is the servant of Ra's will. This etymology reveals a direct link between Abraham and Ra, irrespective of whether the Egyptian episode was legendary or historical. Whatever deity Abraham worshipped when he left Chaldea, he became a worshiper of Ra in Egypt. A prefatory Ra as Atum Ra is the Egyptian god of circumcision, the mode of creating through himself a land. Thus, Abraham's covenant by circumcision with God categorically proves his relationship to Ra. We might even say that Abraham was a humanized version of Ra himself. As we shall see, that particular form that this Ra worship took among Abraham's descendants was that of Yo, or the golden ass. The Ra connection between Abraham's descendants is further substantiated by the case of Isaac. Isaac in Hebrew is Yasek. And remember that Isaac was to be offered as a sacrificial burnt offering or offering by fire to God by Abraham. God prevented the sacrifice by sending a lamb as a substitute offering, the same as Abel's lamb sacrifice. Both sacrifices are typical of the ram age, where the sacrificed Savior takes the form of a lamb. Whatever the case, since the fire is the sacred island of Ra, Isaac or Yishak is related to Ra by his connection to fire. So there's some stuff. So all of this is breaking down. So again, from the Hebrew to the Egyptian. There's quite a bit more. But let me do something. Let me go back a bit. Let's see if I can find what they talk about. Here we go. Looking for Ham. Let's see where he broke that down to. So I'm not finding that. This book, when we look at it, this books like this here is very important because they open up your mind to other areas. We can find out other areas which needs to be examined. Then we can have a better understanding of things. So getting back to this, it is interesting to note that Isaac's marriage to Rebekah, like that of Abraham and Sarah, was also seen to have been a species of brother-sister connubium. When Isaac migrates with his wife Rebekah to the country of Amalek, she is induced to pass herself off as his sister. In the common source, maternal form which this story is drawn, Isaac and Rebekah, like Abraham and Sarah, would have in fact been brother and sister, but this relationship in deference to incest taboos was modified in the Old Testament story. So it's good for the Egyptian, but it's not good for the Hebrews because of the incest aspect. So the entire line of Abraham seems to have been linked to Ra as priests, devotees, or human personifications. Isaac's son Jacob is no exception. His name in Hebrew is Jacob, or Jacob, who is Y-A-Q-B or Y-A-Q-U-B, but whose Egyptian equivalent is Jacob, Y-A-Q-B, or Y-A-Q-E-B. This name is susceptible to more than one interpretation. On one hand, Yah may be the diminutive of Yah, A-Y-A-Y, a name of the golden ass, and a form of Ra, and Queb means circuit. Jacob or Jacob is therefore a circuit of the sun, that is to say Ra, moving on his heavenly path as the golden ass. On the other hand, Yah may be a diminutive of Yah, Y-H, a name of the deified moon in Egyptian mythology, who may be Thoth, Khonsu, or Osiris. Therefore, Jacob may be the moon Yah or his monthly peregrinations through the nighttime sky. This reflects the dominant and lunar methods extant among the peoples of Western Asia in early antiquity, a point of which we shall return later. Because my contention is that everybody gets everyone gets the original culture from the motherland, which is Africa. We go out with this knowledge, and we may modify it over time, but when we look back into the ancient African records, we find the origin of such things. Now, Jacob's name changed to Israel in the wake of two events. One, the vision of the ladder permitting angels to go back and forth between heaven and earth. And two, the wrestling match with the angel wherein Jacob was said to have seen the face of God. In its Hebrew form, Israel is Yisrael, Y-S-R-A-L, and Egyptian, Y-S-R-A-I-R. Y-S means place. Ra is the creator sun god, and Ir means to create. Thus, Yisrael means the place where Ra created. A reference to the place in Manta where souls, having been justified by Osiris, climbed their ladders to the boat of Ra to join the beautify the elect. Jacob's ladder and the ladder of Ra are one of the same. There's evidence that the emergence of the place named Yisra, assuming that the Exodus did not occur until nearly the end of the 13th century BC. Many have preceded the founding of that country by the Hebrews. The study of Maranatha, circa 1230 BC, mentions Yisra as one of the beliefs of Asiatic peoples that had laid to waste by Manapar's armies. But people are using that to say that this is the early name for Israel, which is not true either. Yisra is based, his seed is not. This might refer to the forced expulsion of children of Israel and the co-religions under the Moses Osiris, as related by Manetho. In any event, Jacob Israel represents yet another of the 75 forms of Ra, and a continuation of an unbroken Ra tradition extending back to Abraham. And that takes us back to the thought about the number of names for Allah. Yes? So this says in her that was 75 forms of Ra, but there are 72 forms of the way to invoke the name of Allah in the what is the name? Muslim tradition, yes. So the fourth member of the Ra Rashman quartet of pre-Mosaic patriarchs is Joseph. Translated from Hebrew, his name is rendered as Yusuf, Y-U-S-U-P-H, the favorite son of Jacob Israel, which is the former devotee to Ra. In Egyptian, this name can be taken on three different forms. Yusufi, which is Y-U-S-E-F-I, Yusufi, which is Y-I-U, or Yusep, which is Y-U-S-E-P. Yu means to come, and Sephi means child or son, making Yusef a type of the ever-coming son. This is Horus, who draws every day on the morning sun, who dawns every day on the morning sun, and is therefore the prototype of the ever-coming son of Ra. Since Yu can also be Y-I-U, Y-U Sephi is the son of Yu, the golden ass, a type of Ra. Sep is the name of Osiris, so that Yusep is Osiris, the coming one, who in this guise is really just Horus. Each of these derivations assimilates Joseph as the Ra cycle, and thus all the patriarchs from Adam to Joseph must either have worshipped or personified Ra. In most instances, as Yu, the golden ass, his visible album was the sun. So let's see, no time for that there. I need to time myself for what I'm doing here now. So we're getting into some more etymologies. Let us look at this here. So a lot of things to explain the Bible. Let us go into this. There was a story in the Bible about a person who violates the commandment of God and spills the seed on the ground. So here we have the story of Onan. So the typology of fertilization, death, and rebirth explored in earlier chapters also crops up in the Old Testament. The curious story of Onan, destroyed by God for spilling his seed on the ground instead of impregnating his dead brother's wife, is of this character, revealing himself through an Egyptian etymology. In Hebrew, Onan is Anun, A-U-N-A-N. Anunin in Egyptian, A-U means ground, and Nan means to anoint. So that O-U-O-N-A-N, Onan, or A-U-N-A-N, Hebrew, is Ana means to anoint the ground. This refers to Onan spilling his seed on the ground through premature withdrawal and reveals him as another form of the sacred king who fertilizes the mother, in this instance, Mother Earth, with his semen then typically is destroyed. He can also be a form of Ra as Unan. Un means to create, and Am means to turn back on oneself. Thus, he who creates out of himself. This is clearly Atum Ra, who created mankind out of the masturbatory act, a divine onanism, as it were, thereby becoming the masculine figure of the God who creates out of himself. Once again, the conundrums of the Old Testament are illuminated by the light of the phenomenal typology of Old Kemet. We can now proceed to examine the etymology of the name of Moses, who all biblical patriarchs is probably the earliest with some claim to historicity. Our evidence has already led us after Melanin to identify him with the apostate priest of Ra, Osiphus. So this history is not really known. People just read the Bible, and that suffices them as good enough. But I had to go deeper because I was totally confused, and this clears up quite a lot of the confusions. So just by, like I said, just breaking down names, very important. So, that's a lot. That's a lot. That's a lot. That's a lot for words there. Let me see. So Moses, I'll break it down quickly. Moses won Mushat, which is Hebrew, carried in an ark of bulrushes as an infant, found in a sea of reeds, becomes a type of the Hebrew savior. And in Egyptian, Musha, broke it down. Mu means sea or pool. Sha means reeds. Sa means to obtain or to draw from. Musha means sea of reeds. Musha means to draw from the pool of water. So thus, from every conceivable angle, the Egyptian province of Moses is corroborated. For what reason? Herod, a fraud, insists that Moses must have been an Egyptian. Let us break down this Moses story. So now we can proceed to examine the etymology of the name of Moses, who is, of all biblical patriarchs, is probably the earliest with some claim to historicity. So our evidence has already led us after Melanin to identify him with the apostate priest of Ra, whose name Osiphus. So to look for the historical Moses anywhere else is to pursue a phantom. That he was a remarkable individual is evident, that his persona is evidently overshadowed by mystic qualities is also beyond question. It is readily admitted that the name Moses was never Hebrew in origin to begin with, but Egyptian, allowing for a seamless etymological connection. Because that's what remember Moses had to be Egyptian because that's where he was born. Kemet, I should say. The Hebrew form of Moses is M-S-H-H, or Meshuah, M-U-S-H-E-H. And in Exodus story, he assumes a number of attributes. One, as an infant, he is carried down to the river in an ark of bulrushes. Two, he is found in a sea of reeds, example, or in a papyrus swamp by Pharaoh's daughters. And three, he becomes a type of Hebrew savior. In Egyptian, his name has two forms. One is Musha, M-U-S-H-A, or two, Musa, M-U-S-H. Mu means sea or pool, and Shah means reeds. The Musha is literally the sea of reeds. The Egyptian way of designating a papyrus swamp, hence the sea of reeds, or the Red Sea. Thus, the name of Moses refers to his nativity, and since the infant Horus also was born in a papyrus swamp to conceal him from his enemies, we may say that Moses is a type of Horus. We also know that just as Horus is a type of Egyptian savior, so is Moses, a Hebrew analog. In the second form, Shah means to obtain, S-A-H, or to draw from, so that Musa means to draw from the water. We will remember that it was in Exodus the daughter of Pharaoh bestowed the name Moses on the fountain because he, as she put it, I drew him from the water. So recording Manetho, Moses was originally Osafis, meaning son of Osiris. Another datum connecting him with Horus, himself the son of Osiris. Thus, from every conceivable angle, the Egyptian providence of Moses is corroborated with good reason. The brother of Moses is Aaron. The Hebrew is A-H-R-N. Because remember, one must always remember, although we see a lot of vowels in these words, in the original Hebrew, words do not have vowels. In the original languages, such as the Maginata, vowels are not used. Vowels are a late introduction. They say when Catullus took the words into the lattice, what they call Phoenician, which is not a name. We shall look at that in due course too. But when Catullus took the lattice into Greece from what they call the Levant now, not all the letters they could use in the language, so they took the letters, some of the letters, and modified them and called them vowels. And hence we have these, we have consonants and vowels, A-E-I-N-U, and these are interchangeable. The vowels give you body to words. So Aaron is the fashioner and high priest of the golden calf. In Egyptian, we get Aaron, or A-H-R-N, or Aaron. Ah means bull, and Ren means child or calf, making Aaron the bull calf. Thus, Aaron as Aaron is the golden calf, a youthful type of the celestial bull from the age of Taurus, whose mother would also have been Hathor, the heavenly golden cow. Aaron as a type of Turian savior who, at the time of the Exodus, has long been superseded in the course of the procession by the ram savior of the Iron Age. So the anger of Moses when he descends from Mount Sinai is not directed against the image of the golden calf per se, but against the attempted reestablishment of a zootypical avatar whose time has passed and has been replaced in the inexorable course of the great year by another in the guise of the lamb. So when I get to that point, I'm going to talk about that just now, the procession. The procession is a time in space of 25,920 years is what they call the precession. And what he was just talking about is the representation of three different ages. So from the time of the vernal equinox was just started, it will start in the procession of great year, a month of, 2,160 years. Yes, 2,160 years. And that would stay in position until the next change over in another 2,006 years to the next month As it said in the scripture, my father's house is full of, it has many mansions. And so each zodiac is a house. Yeah. So in this procession that we see in the mythological procession of Moses, we see three different ages. One is the age of the ram or the lamb or Aries. Two is the age of Taurus. And three is the age of Pisces. We start out with Aries. Yes? Aries coming underneath, like we just saw the underneath Isaac when he was taken, was supposed to be sacrificed, and Moses, Abraham found a lamb in the thicket, God said to sacrifice him. And so then we come, now we must remember time is a flooding of time. So water is an element of this flooding. Remember I said the ending of the world comes through two different ways, not of the world, but of time. So by water and by fire. So hence we have the story of Noah. But in the story of Moses, who represents the sun, we have the passage from Egypt into Sinai, which is still Africa, but the passage through the Red Sea. And when he comes off the mountain, he finds the people worshiping the golden calf, and rightfully, as we just saw, he said he wasn't angry at people so much, but at their going back. So hence we're going back on the procession and going back. So before Aries comes Taurus, the bull. Yes? And like I said, this goes for 2,160 years. I'm going to show you the formula for that. This is another paper I wrote on. I'm still in the process of writing. It has to do with the permeates. But this time cycles is very interesting. We have a saying in the scripture says, or in Africa, as above, so below. You know, I'm going to show you what that means in a minute. But so we have the sacrifice of the Passover, and hence the term of the Passover, when the angel of death was to pass over the households that had the blood of the lamb sprinkled on it. Yeah, but by the by the Hebrews, the angel of the death came and killed all the firstborn. So the children of Israel were spared because they sprinkled the blood of the lamb, like Christ, on the mantelpiece, on the doorpiece. And so the next one, so that's we have Aries, Taurus, it represents the golden calf. Always the golden calf because it's the beginning of the new age, yes? But then we have the not and very interesting reference to Pisces, which nobody would ever get, but anyhow, come into the procession, we have Pisces coming up in the form of Joshua, whose name means savior, and the son of Nun, which name means fish. So Joshua, the son of fish. It's the only time you find the word Nun within the Bible, N-U-M. And there's a whole heap of teaching on that there, but anyhow, suffice it to say, the time that Moses left Egypt, and for the time, especially one of that's for 40 years, which is another story in itself. But we have the story of Joshua, the savior of the fish, going into the Canaan land through the body of water called the Jordan River. So once again, river is as a crossing, as a barrier to go through. So the procession is like this here. There are 30 bands around the equator, star clusters, each called a house. Each band has 30 days, like in ancient Africa, we had 30 days, or 30 divisions, or 30 degrees. But it takes 72 years to make 1 degree. Yeah. So the formula for the entire number is 72 times 30 times 12. Yeah. Yeah. 72 times 30 times 12. And that gives you 25,920. And one could see from just that what we're dealing with. 25,000 920 is a circle. And that's what the ancient Egyptians worked on. They worked on circles. So it's 72 years to make a 1 degree within this heavenly band, and there are 30 degrees within one cycle, circle, one cycle. Yeah, and 30 times 12 gives you the number that I just said. Let me see. Let me do this like this here. If I share, yeah. So what am I looking at? I'm not sharing the screen right now, but I'm looking at my phone. I'm gonna do this quick calculation of numbers. My phone was that quick. So now it's 72. Now this 72 years is very important because within the, I'm not calling that back. So within this 72, we must have to remember a full year is 35 days, 365 and a quarter days. So this 72-year cycle, it calculates this quarter days. Because if one was to do without that quarter of a day, then one would go wrong. Yes? So 72 multiplied by 30, which is 2,160. That's what I said. That's one month. And then I multiply by that 12 times, and that gives you 25,920 years. That's one great year. So it's 12 months of 30 days, right? It gives you $25,000. What is interesting is that the numbers, the 72 is a 9, the 3, and then 1 and 2 is 3. Yeah? But 25,920 is actually gives you back to 9. So hence anything a cycle broken on in any way and added up always gives you back to 9. A circle is 360 degrees. 3 and 6 is 9. And if you divide a circle in half, it's 180 degrees. 1 and 8 is 9. And if you quarter that circle, it comes up to 90 degrees each corner or each section. So hence the 9 again. 9 and 0 is 9. And if you divide that 90 degrees, you get 45 degrees, and 4, 5 is 9. So anyway you divide the circle, you get you come back to the number 9. So this shows you that everything was worked on a cycle, and the 72 is a very important part of this equation. So this I think is going to suffice for this lesson tonight, just on etymology and time. Yeah, so this is a foray into Hailey's African science class. Please join me once again, coming forward to give this knowledge. Bless up, Hotep. I think that's enough. Okay, so now this is it. So where you two alchemists? Are you gone? Let me see. I'm gonna stop sharing. Okay. Okay, cool. So this is what I'm saying. So what's going on? I know that what happened. I'm gonna do this. Hey, but I didn't see all of that there. So my bad. I'm getting bracket again. Stop cam. Stop.